Welcome to Unlocking Your Truth, another podcast by Dr. Lesley Phillips.
Hello everybody and welcome to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Lesley. My name is Dr. Lesley Phillips and I am your host for the next hour. This show is a talk radio show about metaphysics and spirituality. My goal is to uplift you, to inspire you and to expand your concept of reality. And we have a weekly exploration into the intuitive. And if you have a question, you can phone or you can write info@drlesleyphillips.com. And today's topic, I don't remember if we've covered it before, and I think we actually may not have done, is mediumship. And I'll explain a little bit why I chose that topic. A really good friend of mine passed away this week, and his funeral service is actually in Dublin in a few hours from now. And I just wanted to pay my respects to this very good friend live on air, because he is the person who introduced me to radio. Now, his name was Kevin Bull, and his show was called The Earth Needs Rebels Show. And it's on Free Thinking Voice. If you Google The Earth Needs Rebels Show or Free Thinking Voice, you will be able to find all the podcasts of his past shows. And I was the psychic advisor to The Earth Needs Rebels Show. And Kevin really introduced me to being on the radio. That's how I first started, was he invited me as a guest on his show. And we had so much fun together that he had me on as a regular guest, usually every month until he got really sick, and he's not been broadcasting live for a while. But anyway, in thinking about Kevin and paying my respects to Kevin, because I wouldn't be here today doing this show if I hadn't met him. And so I really feel like I have a lot to thank him for. But in thinking about him, that triggered the idea of doing a show on mediumship. Because Kevin had a really famous uncle who was a famous British medium. And he used to tell me stories about his uncle coming to visit him. And so this uncle had always said when he was alive, he'd said to Kevin, because he was always telling him about what he did for a living and how he used to talk to dead people. And he said, Kevin, when I pass over, I'm going to come and send you a message. I'm going to come and talk to you. So there will be absolutely no doubt in your mind that there is life after death. And so Kevin told me, after his uncle passed away, he started smelling the smell of his uncle's cigars around his house. And so every time he would smell the cigar smoke, he would have the memory of this uncle who was a famous British medium. And he asked me, well, do you think that this is my uncle? And so live on air, we had a session where I looked at where the cigar smoke was coming from, and lo and behold, it was his uncle. And we had a little bit of conversation with the uncle live on air. And so that's going to be fun for anyone who wants to phone in tonight. If you have somebody who has passed away, who you would like to communicate with, then call up the show today and ask about it. But of course, as always, you're welcome to call up with any question that you like, but that would be especially fun. Now, of course, when I heard that Kevin had passed away, I thought, well, I'm going to talk to him then. And right away, there he was. I could hear his voice in my ear exactly as it had sounded when he was alive, talking to me and telling me about how he was doing. And when his show was all about, well, you can tell by the title, The Earth Needs Rebels. It was a rebels platform for people to speak out on anything that benefited or protected society in the world that we live in. So it was sort of like part of the truth movement, exposing corruption in the world, exposing scientific and medical issues, alternative medicine, legal issues, publishing, music, film. He covered the whole gamut, but he was especially fond of exposing the wrongs in the world. And he had a couple of huge news stories during the time that he was doing the show. He actually exposed certain things that were going on that reached global national news coverage. So he really did a fabulous job. And when I spoke to him now that he's passed, he was telling me that he is still in the afterlife interested and passionate about all of the same things, about helping watch over this earth and and help us get back on track. So, my very good friend Kevin, I just want to say I love you very much, and this show that we're doing today is dedicated to you. So I'm going to spend the next 5 minutes talking a little bit more about mediumship. And the show's producer, by the way, Corey, is in the studio with me today, and he has some mediumistic powers of his own. So when you call in, you'll get the benefit of both of us. Anyway, in that story that Kevin told me, there's a couple of things I'd like to point out. I'm always telling people that mediums, and being a medium is not just one thing. There are many different ways that you can be a medium and that you can receive spiritual information. And so Kevin's story illustrates a couple of different ways. And one of them is this fairly rare ability, but it seems like quite a few mediums have this, and it's called clairolfaction or clairalliance. And it's this idea that a smell is emanated, and the medium picks up on a smell, and the smell gives a clue to who's come to visit. And actually, if you Google on the Virgin Mary, you'll find that there are lots of Catholics who have visitations from the Virgin Mary, and they know it because they smell the smell of roses. Well, I've met a few mediums who say, well, if I'm getting somebody's grandfather, I smell cigars. If I get somebody's grandmother, I smell perfume or I smell flowers. So it's relatively rare in terms of, I work with intuitives all the time, training them, and I find that this is a relatively rare ability in general, but seems to be a bit more common amongst people who are mediums. Now, the other thing that I told you in that story was when I spoke to Kevin and I could hear his voice exactly as it sounded when he was alive. And that is an example of clairaudience, and that translates as clear hearing. It's in your intuitive hearing. So it's where you hear a voice. It's very clear, just as clear as somebody is actually talking to you, except it's kind of, it's not happening on the airwaves, it's happening inside your, when I hear it, I can hear it near my ear, just like I can hear a sound near my ear, but I can definitely tell the difference that this is somebody talking to me through my clairaudience as opposed to somebody who I'm picking up through my ear. And so that's just two ways that you can communicate with people who have passed away. And there are so many others. So another one is clairvoyance. That's my strongest and my most favorite gift, and that's the ability to see the truth. And so a medium who has the gift of clairvoyance, they would say something like, well, I have a gentleman here, and he's wearing a white shirt, brown corduroy pants, and smoking a cigar, and he's got a long ginger beard or something, right? And so they'd see the person that was contacting their loved one, and they would describe them visually. That medium is using their clairvoyance. And another one which is very common with mediums is called clairsentience or clear feeling. And that's when they actually physically sense the energy of the person that they are talking to superimposed on their own energy. So you might get somebody who says, there's somebody here, and when I tune into them, my chest feels really tight. Has anyone in the audience got somebody who passed away from a heart attack? Or they'll say, well, when I tune into this person, I feel like I'm doubled over and I can't walk, or I'm holding a cane or something. So, or I'm sensing emotional distress, somebody who was in great emotional turmoil when they passed away. All of those feelings are examples of a medium who is using their clairsentience. And these are not the only ones. There are even more senses than that. So another one is telepathy. And that is receiving intuitive information in a non-verbal form, more in a sort of symbolic form. That's also a way of communicating with spirit. And of course, there's another one which I find is quite common with people, and that is you don't see or hear or feel, you just know. You don't know how you know, you don't know why you know, but you just know. You might know that the person that's here is called George, and you might say, I have a George here. Or you might know that the person that's there is called Sally, and you might say, I have a Sally here. Or you might know what they did for a living. Or you might know some other piece of information about them. It doesn't make sense how you know it. It just comes to you in a flash, and you don't question it and convey that information. That's another way that someone who is a medium can pass on information. And of course, in my experience, it's interesting. So, especially with spirit guides who are, obviously some of them are fairly advanced, and it's their role or their purpose to work with humans. They will work with you and communicate to you through whatever channel is easiest to reach you through. Whereas, of course, somebody who's an ordinary person who that's not been their purpose to be a spirit guide, they might be a bit less practiced at communicating with people when they're in bodies. And of course, it also depends to some degree of the level of experience and skill of the medium. So now there is an intuitive ability called trance mediumship, and that actually means the ability to bring spirit into the physical body. Every single human being is a trance medium because you are all spirit and you all have a body, and you all bring your own spirit into your own body. But some mediums use that ability to channel. And what that means is they vacate their body and allow another being to enter their body and speak through them. And it tends to happen when they have a being that has useful information to convey, a being that wants to teach. It can happen in cases of possession as well, and that's the opposite end of the spectrum. But it's also possible to happen if somebody was communicating with a relative. That's a possibility for mediumship too. All right, so tonight we're talking about mediumship. I'm going to go to a break, and after the break we will open the phone lines, and we have quite a few questions that people have sent in during the week as well, but we'll be checking the emails during the show. The email is info@drlesleyphillips.com. and welcome back to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Lesley. My name is Dr. Lesley Phillips, and I'm your host. Now, this is the time of the show where we take your calls. And I'm just going to ask Corey, the show producer, if he wants to talk to us about mediumship or if he has any email questions yet.
Well, thanks, Lesley. Dr. Lesley, I should say. Actually, mediumship, I never really believed in it until about 15 years ago or so when I had an amazing experience. And it's a little bit too long to go over the air, but I can discuss it at another time. But it was, my mother came to me while I was at a mediumship at a spiritualist church, and she whispered in my ear, and something very personal. And the woman sitting next to me, who was a friend of mine, is a medium as well, turns to me and says, "Who was that whispering in your ear?" That's when I got the goosebumps. Anyway, I have some questions for you tonight, and they're not on mediumship. However, I have a question from Greg. And Greg asks, I underachieve in every area of my life, and I was wondering where my focus should be in order to break the lifelong pattern.
Okay. Well, that's an interesting question, and I'm going to take a look. And if you're tuning in for the first time, I'll just explain. The way that I do this is I read from a trance state. So I go into an altered state of consciousness, and from that altered state of consciousness, I tune out the physical world and tune more into the spiritual world. And it just puts me in a state of receptivity, and it makes it easier for me to tune in to Greg or anyone else on an energetic level. So bear with me. Well, I do that where I tune into him and take a look at this question of underachieving in every area of his life. And the first thing I want to say is it's not true that you underachieve in every area of your life. It is a perception and a belief that you are holding about yourself. And that perception and belief that you are holding about yourself was set up in your childhood. So it looks to me like you had parents who had very high expectations of you. And it looks, actually, there's this term that's used that's called helicopter parents, isn't it? And it's for these sort of modern parents who hover over their children and don't give them any space. And I'm actually seeing that you had progenitors of the helicopter parents. I'm seeing that your parents were very focused on you and actually quite focused on controlling you. Controlling you in the sense that they wanted you to achieve, they wanted you to perform, they wanted you to be in a certain way, and they wanted to receive validation through you and what they wanted you to do. So that said, I'm just going to reconnect with your energy a little bit and see what else there is to say about this. Yeah, so I'm seeing that very early in your life there was a program that was set up that told you, I'm not good enough, I'm an underachiever, I'm an underperformer, because it looks like there were just what went on in your childhood when you were at school or when you were doing the other activities and things that your parents wanted you to do or even that you wanted to do. You were always being measured against a high standard, and if you didn't live up to it, you were labeled as an underperformer and an underachiever. And I'm seeing that it looks like your parents paid a lot of attention to you, what you were doing at school, had conversations about you with your teachers. Everyone was discussing how you were underperforming and you just labeled yourself, I'm an underperformer. And you grew up believing you were an underperformer, and guess what? You create your reality through your beliefs. So because you believe that, everything that happens in your reality is filtered through that belief, and everything that happens in your reality is created through that belief. So the key to break the lifelong pattern is stop believing you're an underachiever and stop caring what other people think and stop trying to live up to external expectations. And the other thing is you've internalized these expectations now. So also stop expecting things of yourself. It comes down to accepting yourself as you are. And I can see that in response to that, you immediately say, how can I accept myself as I am? I'm not good enough. But therein lies the issue. It's that cycle of beliefs that's going round and round. So you have to break that pattern. You have to let go of the past. You have to love yourself in the now and celebrate yourself in every area of your life. Start believing in yourself and your ability to create what you want in your life. And if you can do that, you'll start seeing your reality shift and your perception of your reality shift. So that's my advice for you, Greg, and I hope that helps. And we will see if there is another question.
Actually, someone did email with a question regarding the other world, as they would say. And this is from Sal. And Sal asks, what was my mother-in-law trying to tell me just before she died?
Okay. Great question. So I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to tune in to Sal's energy, and we shall see. Okay. So the first thing that I'm seeing is that as she was in that death and dying process, her reality shifted, her focus shifted, and she started tuning out the physical world and tuning in to the spiritual world. And so she started experiencing all sorts of things that are not part of ordinary reality. And I'm seeing that she was tuning into the light. She was tuning into her guides. She was tuning into the angels and all of the help and support that was there for her as she went through the death and dying process. And so I'm actually seeing what she was wanting to communicate with you was her excitement about what she was seeing. So it's almost like she was wanting to say, it's true, it's real. There is life after death. There is an afterlife. There are these things called angels. There is this other realm, that we imagine and we wonder if it happens. And she was just wanting to tell you about what she was seeing. And it was just more her excitement at wanting you to have that information and share that experience. I mean, I'm seeing it wasn't even that she was necessarily saying, I'm all right and I'm going to be all right. It was just more the pure excitement and joy at what she was tuning into. And of course, when somebody passes away, there's an energetic shift that happens. It happens when people are born as well. In order for somebody to transition from one aspect of reality into another, that takes an enormous amount of energy. So the energy when someone is born is super high, and the energy when somebody dies is also super high. And so I'm seeing, the joy and excitement and the upliftment was all to do with that energetic shift. And she was sensing that high energy, and she was sensing things that she, during life, wasn't able to sense. And so, and this is a common experience for people when they are in that state, when they're very close to death, that they will start to see things that are not there. And, of course, the medical profession will say that these are delusions and they're illusions, or they're an effect of the medication that they're on or the painkillers that they're on. But in truth, these experiences, I'm not sure whether all of them, but in my experience, have to do with getting ready for that transition to move into non-ordinary reality, to move into spiritual consciousness, and and just all that comes along with that. So I hope that answers your question, and we've got time for one more question before the break, I think.
Okay, Dr. Lesley. I have one from Shania. And actually, Shania is going the opposite direction. She's going back to when she was very young. And she wants to know, what happened to me at the age 4 or 5 that caused me to drastically change?
Huh. Okay. All right. So I'll take a look at that. This lady's question. And of course, actually, before I do that, those early years are very formative. They say that between the ages of 0 and 3 years old, 80% of your personality and your belief structure is laid down. And so when you think about it, most of that time, at least half of it, you can't even speak yet, and you're sort of surrounded in the energy of other people like your parents. You're kind of imbibing and taking on their belief system. And so that's why so much of the problems that we experience later in life, in order to address them, we have to go back to the childhood and deprogram the belief system, let go of the parental beliefs. That's one of the major keys to releasing yourself and setting yourself free and living your life on your terms. So I'll take a look. Oh, and before I do, sometimes there are traumatic events that occur early in life, and they can just be such foundational experiences. They can really set down core beliefs. And so if it's a traumatic experience, then again, it can cause you not to trust the world. It can cause you to fear the world. It can cause you not to feel safe, and all sorts of things. And I'm going to invite this lady to email me again privately, but I'll talk in general terms and see. So give me a moment. Yeah, I mean, I am seeing, I'll just validate that something happened around that age that was a traumatic event, and that it caused an issue for you. Sometimes, even though we use false names on this program, I think sometimes some questions are better dealt with in private. And so I'm going to pass on that one, Corey, and this lady can email me in private. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Lesley. My name is Dr. Lesley Phillips. Today's show has been about mediumship. Every show we have a different theme that is to do with spirituality and metaphysics. And we always start the show with a little talk about the topic of the week, and then we take your calls, because this is a talk show, and so we like you to phone us up and ask your questions. The email address is info@drlesleyphillips.com. And Corey, do you have anyone else emailed a question in?
Yes, I do, but I have a question first. Where did I put my pen? Can you tell me, since you're psychic?
I don't know, but you can borrow mine if you want.
Okay, good. Here it is. I found it. No, I have a question from Gilles. Being from Quebec, it sounds like a Gilles to me, as opposed to Gilles or Gilles. And Gilles asks, I live in the desert and long for a little summer place further north, further north where I could have a little garden. work with the soil, and reconnect with the earth. I love the desert, but I do miss the beauty of the green. Will my desire ever come to fruition?
Okay. Well, that's a fun question, isn't it? It's usually people who live in the north who want to move south. I could tell why you were chuckling at that one. All right, so I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to go into my trance, my state of altered consciousness, and tune into this person and tell you all what I see. Well, and I can see what you're talking about. I can see that you have this definite desire for, let's call it, it's almost a desire for balance. And it feels like spending all your time in the desert. It's putting you out of balance. It looks like you have a natural affinity for the seasons of the earth. You know, for summer and spring and winter and fall, and yet you've placed yourself in an area where there's less variation in temperature and season. So it's almost like your natural biorhythms or your body rhythms. It looks like your body and you in general feel more comfortable when you've got that seasonal shift and that seasonal change. And there's something else coming up to do with the energy of where you're living and the type of energy that you're seeking to be in. And I think it actually has to do with water. So bear with me. I'm not seeing that very clearly. So, folks, it's hard on the radio, you know, if you have to go quiet for a little bit because you're reading somebody. But I'm just going to take a moment just to look a bit more at this lady's question. Well, the other second part of her question is, will my desire ever come to fruition? And of course, I won't predict the future with people because I believe you create your own reality. And so it's really down to you whether your desire will ever come to fruition. But I'm seeing that, the ingredients are there. In order to manifest something, in order to have something come to fruition, the first thing you have to have is a strong desire. And I'm seeing you have a strong desire. And you have this strong affinity for the cycles of nature that is pulling you and drawing you towards having that in your reality. And then you have to believe that you can have what you want. And let's see what's holding you back from creating what you want. That's a different way of looking at this question. Well, it's interesting. It looks like the desert is a very familiar environment in one way. It looks like it's sort of energetically familiar, and you're comfortable with it. You're comfortable with where you live. And so part of it has to do with a fear of change and, changing where you live, changing what's familiar, needing to connect with new people, create new community around you. It looks like you just have some resistance to change, which is funny because at the beginning of this, I said that you have a desire for the changing seasons. So I'm kind of contradicting myself there. And so let me look at why. So on the one hand, you have a desire for it, and on the other hand, you resist it. So what is the resistance to do with? Well, it looks like on a spiritual level, you... It looks like on a spiritual level you enjoy it looks like where you live there's a very high, actually quite a high energy vibration. And it looks like it's your physical body that's saying, sort of like your physical body that is wanting a shift in seasons and a break from the heat. And so I'm picking up some kind of disconnect between you, the spiritual being, and your physical body. So part of it looks like part of the drive is coming from your body for this. Let me see what else I can pick up. Because there is something blocking you, and I'm not seeing very clearly right now what that is. And I think it's just believing that it's possible and believing that you might have something to do with your finances or something. But if you want to write to me, Gilles, and give me a bit more information, we can have another chat about it online. But that's all I'm seeing for you at the moment. So, do we have another question?
Yes, we do, Dr. Lesley. And I have a little comment on this question before you give her
great.
your intuitive reading. And this is from Jen. And Jen says, I'm lost. I don't know what to do with my life. I'm only 20 and I feel like everything is going downhill. Why am I sabotaging myself? Why have I been so depressed? And what should I do with the rest of my life? Well, Jen, I'll give you a couple of little quick words of advice, having been down the 20-year-old path. Don't blink, because if you blink, you'll be 30. And then you'll get really depressed. And then if you blink again, you'll be at 45. And you'll be wondering, what happened to my 20s and 30s? All I can tell you, Jen, is that whatever is happening, wherever you're going, it's what's supposed to be. Just relax and be in the now, and don't worry about what's coming down the pipe. Just be there now, and if you're there in the now, the depression will leave you, and also you'll stop sabotaging yourself as well. Now, I'll turn it over to Dr. Lesley, who I'm sure has some more intuitive words than those.
Well, you hit part of the nail on the head there. Okay, so let's take a look at... So one of the things that I always tell people, and it is, you hit the nail on the head when you talked about be in the now. Because what can happen is if you're not in present time, is if you spend too much time in the past, then your body will get depressed. And the reason is that you, the spirit, you can be in the past, you can be in the present, you can be in the future, you can be anywhere. But your physical body can only be in present time. It exists in present time. It exists at a point in the time-space continuum. That's where it is. And so if you spend a lot of time in the past, what you will find is your body will start to feel depressed because it can't go back in time and change anything. So yes, a piece of advice number one is bring yourself into the here and now. And I actually believe that last week we did, either last week or the week before, we did a show on present time. So go onto the CIVL website and into the podcasts and look for the show from last week. And if it wasn't that show, it's the show before. And listen to it, because I gave lots of hints and tips about how to bring yourself into present time. And I'll give you a couple of very simple ones now, but there are some meditation techniques in that show that you can listen to as well. But if you focus on anything to do with your body, like your breath, like your heartbeat, or if you focus on anything from your physical senses, like the sounds around you, that will automatically start to focus your attention into the here and now. And if you check out that show, it will give you some meditation techniques to pull your thoughts into the here and now as well. So let me see if there's anything else to say apart from that. Yeah, I am seeing it has to do with this disconnect between you, the spiritual being, and your physical body. And it looks like you, the spiritual being, is kind of doing your own thing and not paying much attention to your body. And so your body is feeling lost and neglected and depressed. And so the whole deal about being here on earth is you are spirit. You are not your physical body. This is a vehicle that you have created. You are meant to occupy this vehicle and use it to have, whatever experiences that you care to have. But the trick is, in order to do that, you have to be focused in your body. And I'm seeing that that's part of what's going on with you, is that your energy isn't focused in your body. And another tip to help you with that, it's in last week's show, is grounding. But very briefly, that's a technique where you create a flow of energy that goes from near the base of your spine to the center of the earth, and that will also help anchor you in your physical body. So, be present, and I think you'll find that your reality will start to shift. I think we have time for one more question.
Yeah, I have a long, short one for you. Mm-hmm. Figure that one out. It's from Lynn Marie, and Lynn wants to know, who are my spirit guides? And I presume that we can give her one or two of them while we...
Okay. I'll take a look at that for this lady, Lynn Marie. And I'm just tuning in to her and taking a look at her spirit guides. And I'm tuning into one spirit guide in particular, and the way that the spirit guide is appearing to me, I will describe. But of course, these beings are pure energy. They're neither male nor female. They don't really look like anything apart from pure energy and pure light. But often what they'll do is they will project an image that will help you to connect with them, that will make sense. And so the one that I'm seeing is dressed, if you see, I guess from the time that Jesus was on earth, you just imagine the way that they dressed then in a long robe, and maybe with a, you see how I talked about the Virgin Mary earlier, portrayed, where she's got like a scarf over her head and a long robe. So the guide that I'm seeing, it looks like that, like something out of the cast of Jesus Christ Superstar or something like this. And it's got neither a male nor a female valence. But one of the things that it seems like this is a guide that's telling me, it's teaching you a few things. One of the things that's coming up is patience. And actually what we've been talking about, which is being present, but patience, helping you to not get ahead of yourself, helping you to be in the moment, helping you to love yourself exactly as you are right now, and not expect yourself to be going somewhere else or being something else. And this guide is showing me a tray, and I'm just taking a look at what's on the tray. And on the tray is an abacus, that counting device. And it's actually, I think there's some parallel between you and the very first person who asked a question on the show today, because it's almost like you're measuring yourself. You have expectations of yourself and you're measuring yourself. And you're wanting to know, how am I doing against those expectations? So this guide is there to help you let go of that. And also it looks like a guide that is wanting to lead you into greater spiritual awareness. So one of the other things is about helping you to let go of overthinking things, and to, again, by being in the moment, just tune in more intuitively and not to overthink. So that's a little bit of information for you on one of your guides. And we are nearing the end of the show. So thank you, everyone, for listening. I'm not going to be here next week. Unfortunately, I have to go on a trip and won't be able to do the show because I'll be in the US somewhere. So probably what will happen is we will play one of our past shows. But I will be here the week after that. So I look forward to connecting with you again in 2 weeks from now. My name is Dr. Lesley, and you have been listening to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Lesley.
Thank you for joining us. You've been listening to another Unlocking Your Truth podcast by Dr. Lesley Phillips. For more information, go to our website at drlesleyphillips.com. That's drlesleyphillips.com, where you can ask questions or send her an email, and there's many free gifts on there for you as well. Come back again.